Okay, so in one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them, of the first 100 men and women, has gained access to and believes in a power greater than themselves. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. As a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. So here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed, and they flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, step 2, to take a certain attitude toward that power, step 3, and to do certain simple things, steps 4 through 12, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. We can cross-reference that to page 27, where Dr. Carl Jung talks about the emotional rearrangement, right? Let's head over to 27 real quick and read that. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them, right? Psychic change, entire psychic change, spiritual experience, the solution. So let's read this again. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, step 2, to take a certain attitude toward that power, step 3, and do certain simple things, steps 4 through 12, right? Which remove the obstacles that are blocking us from having an experience of the great reality within. There has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking, right? The psychic change. In the face of collapse and despair, and in the face of total failure of their human resources, right? We know that self-surrender is indispensable. Self-surrender is indispensable. And in Varieties of Religious Experiences by William James, which is the only other book mentioned in the first 164 pages of the textbook, he has found the common denominator between all the people that have these experiences, and self-surrender was it. Self-surrender is indispensable. So in the face of collapse and despair and total failure of self, reliance on self, right? What's the first requirement of step 3? Being convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. They found a new power, peace, and happiness and sense of direction that flowed into them, right? Did they get tuned in and tapped in and get in touch with the great reality within from page 55? Because they removed what was blocking them off from that. This happened as soon as they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Hold on just a second here. They told me this was take what you want and leave the rest. Now, as I study the book, it says here there are requirements. Well, shoot, what are these requirements? It seems that I should really know what these are if I'm dying of alcoholism. Well, we got them here on the screen. What are the requirements? Page 60, 4th paragraph. Let's take a look. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Do you ever hear people talking about this in meetings? The first requirement of step 3, based on what I'm reading here, it's really, really important for me to know this and to understand this, okay? What is self-will? Am I running my life on self-will? Oh, yeah, I remember in Varieties of Religious Experience, it says self-surrender is indispensable. Interesting. All these things are starting to click and make sense. And it also says here that any life, not just the alcoholic, how many lives does that leave out? That's literally all the people on the planet. Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So it becomes important for me to understand what is self-will, what is self, and to define what success is, right? I'm sure most people automatically think of success as financial independence or something to do with money or time, freedom, this kind of thing. Well, ask yourself, do you know rich people that are happy, joyous, and free? Do you know rich people that are miserable, right? I have an intolerable situation right here in between my ears. So success to me is perfect peace and ease, right? Basically, the promises of step 9. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, let's go to page 13. 13, the end of 13. My friend promised when these things were done, right, when the steps were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my creator. What is our path here in Alcoholics Anonymous? I'm just going to remind you on page 77, you may not have heard this particular slide yet. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. I'm sorry, that's not what I was looking for. I'm looking for page 72. We have been trying to get a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator and to discover the obstacles in our path. Okay? Back to bottom of 13. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. I would have all the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. How many problems does that leave out? Belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. Okay? Now, I look at that, I read that, I understand it intellectually. Then I think about the state I was in when it came to Alcoholics Anonymous, just completely strung out on dope, right? No kind of spiritual education, no emphasis on, these types of words were not the lexicon used in our alcoholic home, let's say. And now I'm asked to understand what willingness is, honesty and humility, right? Willingness is demonstrated only through action. Honesty is introspection, getting honest with myself, having an awareness of where I'm at. The lying to people, that's gonna just fall naturally later when I recover. And humility. Humility is one of those fun words that you can look up in all kinds of different dictionaries and you'll get a different word. And by the time we get through the big book study, you will have settled on what your definition of humility is. Okay, so I needed an education when it came to this stuff. I needed to understand really what these words deeply mean, and things like that. I didn't have a spiritual education, but that was awesome in the respect that it was less prejudice that I needed to overcome, right? We get indoctrinated, we get told what these words are, we get told who God is from society, from home, from family, friends, school, you name it. So the less we have of that to overcome, the better, right? We have to unlearn that stuff. And we're truth seekers. We want to know what the truth is. Okay, and then let's go to XXVII, where it says there is a few simple rules. And I think that is from the 3rd edition, which I don't have in front of me right now, but basically it just says a few simple rules. That's all it says there anyway. But the point that we're trying to make here is that there are requirements, there are musts, there are rules, there are conditions. And we need to align ourselves with those. This is not take what you want and leave the rest. So once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they are making the heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them, right? Remember, we talked about last time what the purpose of the stories are, page 50. page 29, it tells us what the purpose of our stories are, to explain how we came into a new relationship with God. What it was like, what happened is the psychic change, and what it's like now growing along spiritual lines. How did this revolutionary change, spiritual experience, psychic change, how the fuck, excuse me, how did I get that from being a drug addict, right? Seriously, that's the kind of stories we need to be telling around here. Not, okay, yeah, I could rattle on for 55 minutes or more about my 8-day blackout in Mexico. Sure, I could do that. That's not going to help anyone. It might help, for a moment for me to win the confidence of another alcoholic, but then it ends there. We're not really getting into a solution, right? Which is what we're all coming together for. We want to recover from alcoholism. So they show how the change came over them. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God, right? The awareness of the great reality within, page 55, right? Deep down within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by pomp, by calamity, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it was there. And I lived my whole life being completely oblivious to this. And the steps were a process of facing and removing those obstacles so I could get the consciousness, I could touch, experience, and the flow of the presence of God that's within me. And it is in that I am forever knowing that God is, period. It's not a belief, it's a knowing, right? Moving from agnostic to Gnostic. So hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives. They present a powerful reason why one should have faith. Okay? So when we're talking about our stories, what it was like was the unawakened state. What happened was the revolutionary change, the psychic change, the spiritual experience. How did I get there? And what it's like now growing along spiritual lines, continuing to take people through the big book, right? Working 10, 11, and 12, going deeper into this conscious contact with God. My story is not about what it was like, what it's still like, and what it will always be like, because because I'm sorry to say, but there are tons of people in our fellowship that never got a new relationship with God and won't get a new relationship with God. So it's still what it was like, what it's still like, and what it will always be like. And it might even be pretty bad, right? Because the alcoholic mind continues to progress even in dry time. We already established that from chapter 1. So this world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than in all the millenniums that went before. Almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tells us that the intellect of men in those days was equal to the best of today. Yet in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies. We asked ourselves this: are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients about the realm of the material? Even in the present century, American newspapers were afraid to print an account of the Wright brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk. Had not all efforts at flight failed before? Did not Professor Langley's flying machine go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds had proved that man could never fly? Had not people said that God had reserved the privilege to the birds? Only 30 years later, the conquest of the air was almost an old story, and airplane travel was in full swing. So that's 1936. But in most fields, our generation has witnessed complete liberation of our thinking. Show any longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing a proposal to explore the moon by means of rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it. Maybe not so long either. Right? So that was said in 1936, and we know by 1969 it happened. I bet they do it. Maybe not so long either. Is not our age characterized by the ease with which we discard old ideas for new, by the complete readiness with which we throw away the theory or gadget which does not work for something new which does, right? So when you got your cell phone, wasn't it easy to let go of the landline phone, right? We're so ready. It's so easy for us to discard old things for new things if it makes it better. So what this is trying to tell us here is, what old ideas are we hanging on to around a higher power, right? The result was nil until we let go absolutely. This is the big rock. This is the thing to overcome, our prejudice and our old ideas. So we had to ask ourselves, why this readiness to move from a cell phone to a landline phone shouldn't apply to our human problems. The same readiness to change our point of view. Okay? Are we ready? Are we ready to set aside what we think we know about God? Here are the bedevilments. These are the 8 symptoms of alcoholism that can be in full force in dry time, right? Even with a 2-year cake falling out of the sky, these can still be in full force. And what do you hear about people talking in meetings? Think about that for a minute. Trouble with personal relationships, right? This is a symptom of alcoholism. Trouble with personal relationships. Couldn't control our emotional natures. Prey to misery and depression. Right there, that's just tons of meeting hour discussion right there. Couldn't make a living, right? Financial problems, a feeling of uselessness, full of fear, fear's running the show, unhappy, can't seem to be a real help to other people. Was not a basic solution for these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. So see, we're going to get backed into a corner no matter what to face this, to really, really face this. It's going to happen in sobriety, or it's going to happen in continued drinking and using. The people listening to this may not my own personal story, but at 5 years sober, I was ready to kill myself. I had made that decision, and something really great happened. I ran into somebody who was presenting the Big Book study. So here we go. You want to think about this. This is all that's the old ideas are going to bring you. Not having a new relationship and really removing the obstacles within and working the steps. This is all that's left. This is what we get. All right, I see a hand.
Just a quick question on this particular one. Just if you could pause here on this slide. Actually, that's just a question, and then during parking lot, I'll ask the question. But if you could pause here for just a second on the slide, just for like literally 5 seconds. And you might have already been planning on it, but if you could pause here, and then in the parking lot, I have a question about this. So just pause for a second on the slide.
Okay, pause. Why don't we just stop here for today and talk about this?
Okay, that works too.
What's your question?
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so I usually have time to kind of formulate the question before the parking lot. Oh, should we record the parking lot? We usually do.
Yeah, we're recording. Well, while you're forming your question, I'm going to go just over page 19 then.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Yes.
Okay. So this is where we get to practice that honesty, right? The introspection, getting an awareness of where we're at. How long have I been sober? Is this really going on in my life, right? And I had to say it, 5 years sober, being a good AA member, having service commitments every night, all of this jazz, that this was my reality. This was really, I had to get honest with myself and say this is it, right? And then let's go to page 19 real quick. Okay, page 19. It says that we feel, the first real paragraph, we feel that an elimination of our drink is just a beginning, right? But yet that's what we celebrate around here, is the elimination of drinking. Now, how many years sober are you or will you be when you get relief from these symptoms of alcoholism? And that's it.
Okay,
Is
are
your
we in
question?
parking lot?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, okay. So basically, I lived these bedevilments for, gosh, I would say on a daily basis for 4 years, which is a really long time to be physically sober and to be depressed and to feel useless and to have difficulty with personal relationships and to be um, feeling useless and full of fear. And you said at some point every alcoholic is going to go through this, you know, not dry, but not drinking. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So those are sort of like red flags for what would you say? It's one thing maybe to have one of them going on, but if there's I mean, even one thing going on is kind of a red flag, but it's even a bigger thing when there's many of them going on. I'm presuming, and I'm using my own personal experience. It's one thing for me to feel like, okay, well, I feel depressed today, or I've been depressed for this amount of time, or I'm having a difficult time with personal relationships, and these are symptoms of alcoholism. Um, and so those are sort of like those red flags, like those lights in the car that are like, there's something wrong with the engine. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Um, I'm presuming that it goes back to that list of the requirements, musts, and conditions in terms of getting out of that. Does that sound right?
Yes. So I'm going to take it a little bit step further there, right? What we have is the daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition.
Right.
So the person who's got the full demonstration of these 8 bedevilments is not in fit spiritual condition.
Right. Right. So
So
basically, if I have these, there's something wrong with my spiritual condition. And I know that intuitively, but to call it that is something else. So, okay, so daily reprieve. And then if these bedevilments are going on, there's something going on with my spiritual condition. Okay. Please continue.
yeah, so I'll just share a little bit of experiences. I was a really good AA member. I had a sponsor. I worked the steps out of the 12 and 12. I went to meetings every single day. I had service commitments. And at 5 years of doing that, this was my result. And that's because I didn't recover. I didn't have a new relationship with God. I didn't, the way that the steps were worked wasn't the effective method. I still had fear, resentment, all that stuff blocking me off from God within. I had no conscious contact with God. And then my ego, my alcoholic mind was progressively getting worse.
Right.
And now I didn't have drugs or alcohol to get any type of break from it, even a blackout. I didn't have that. So it was horrible.
Right.
And then the mind just comes to the conclusion of suicide.
That's right. The suicide or drinking, suicide or drinking, which is, in my opinion, they meet up at some point. They meet up, you know.
Yeah. And I was, and everybody's like, go get medicine for your depression and all anxiety and stuff. Those things didn't work on me. And as soon as I had a spiritual experience, which was it was a very specific moment in time, I
Right.
have not had symptoms of depression since then. I was
Right.
dying behind the separation from God. Union with God is the solution. And I couldn't get that by attending meetings.
Right. Right. Right.
Had to get down to the real work.
Right. And
But
the
I
crazy,
didn't have anyone telling me how to do it. No one guiding me on the right thing. There's something mysterious about this big book that, we have to unlock it for each other.
right. And that was one of the things I was going to mention is that, for um 2019 I had a bunch of 2018, 2019, a bunch of service commitments. I was showing up, but I wasn't really doing any work. I just showed up at meetings, showed up to show my face, whatever. And in 2020, I began to suffer with these bedevilments, like at an extreme level. And I think one person in 4 years, mentioned the bedevilments. And looking back, it's kind of astonishing to think that, to hear somebody saying, I'm literally from the book suffering personal relationships, feeling hopeless, fear, all of it. And one person in 4 years saying that might be bedevilment and then moving on quickly. You know, it's
Yeah.
that's big. That's big. And I think about the bedevilments a lot. And I think about them a lot because I think about how many alcoholics I hear while in meetings who are talking about the bedevilments, but nobody ever says that. Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever says these are symptoms of alcoholism without the drink. Nobody says that. And how useful would it be to say these are, this isn't crazy. You're an alcoholic. You're not drinking. And these are the other symptoms.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
How powerful would that be in helping people get convinced of step one?
Right. 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 I was at the meeting that I mentioned the other day, and there was a man on the meeting. And because the women had asked for my phone number. So I don't know I'm not really clear with Zoom. So I text my phone number to everybody. Anyway, a man got my phone number, and he had texted me a nice text. And he said, because I had shared the way in the format that you had suggested. But prior to that, that format, I had said, I'm out of a relapse that lasted a year, and I had some heavy duty clean time, and I missed, or sobriety time, and I missed so much during those 14 years, so much. Anyway, this man had texted me, and he said to me, Jamie, thank you for saying that. I was 18 years clean and sober, and I drank because my mind wouldn't stop. My mind wouldn't stop. And I put a stop to it finally with alcohol after 18 years. And I wondered if anybody ever shared with that man, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's such a big deal. It's such a big deal to talk about the other symptoms of alcoholism, because we haven't drank. Wow, yay, woo, okay. But am I an asshole every day? Do I have any personal relationships at work every day? I mean, I'm sober, but look at my life.
Yeah. And for me, before the big book study, whenever I read this, I thought these are only happening in active drinking and using. But when it was explained to me through the whole process of going through the book, that these could be in full force when you're stone cold sober, then I started to really, something clicked, right?
Yeah, totally.
What are people talking about at meetings? Trouble with personal relationships, money, controlling their emotional natures, being depressed, anxious.
They're talking about this. Everybody's talking about this, and nobody is saying these are also, hey, you know what, buddy? These are also symptoms of alcoholism. And this is my next question for the parking lot. Okay, just to kind of this is a nice little kind of a bridge to the next question, my parking lot question. So you had mentioned there are a list, or not a list, but you said there are requirements, musts, and conditions. And then I wrote down, is there a list? May I refer to a list? I'm a list kind of person, like, because I'm imagining that I understand that I have a daily reprieve based on my spiritual condition, and I'm a human, and I may fall into these bedevilments. I would like to think that I can come out of them before they take me under. And so, before they take me under, is it possible through these must requirements and conditions? Is it possible to use those things before they're really getting me? That's my question.
Yes. Yes. So what you're asking me about is our design for living, right?
Okay.
So what you and I are working on is building into our life, building into our routine, the exercises and actions we need to do to stay in fit spiritual condition. Instead of it being like, oh shoot, I need to launch into action, the action is going to be a part of our life, the same way that walking dogs are a part of our life, brushing our teeth, doing laundry. We have all these routines in our life to maintain certain things. So for us, we're starting with working with another alcoholic 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
We're aiming for that. We're trying to make that a reality.
Yep.
And we have some subtasks that we can do to get there, because we can't, just the moment we become willing, we still don't have it set up. So
Right.
and we do that by changing the way we attend meetings, what we say
Yep.
at meetings, the questions we ask ourselves, and then 10, 11, and 12 build,
Yep.
doing 10, 11, 12. So that has to be, we're spiritual athletes, spiritual warriors, whatever the word is. Like if I'm a weightlifter, I need to lift weights. I don't know, I'm not a weightlifter, but a certain number of times a week to keep the muscles up. Same with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that really answers my question, because my question, because this is powerful stuff, really powerful. And I think it's powerful because of how long I lived in abject dry misery, and every one of these bedevilments I had every single day, but I refused for 4 years to drink. I refused, and to talk about freaking misery, that's a lot of misery. And so I don't ever want to go back there. So working the list of requirements, musts, and conditions, which I'm working on right now, 3 times a week, 10, 11, and 12, and keeping it spiritual daily reprieves based on spiritual condition, and thinking of myself as a spiritual athlete, and just being willing, like the lady's like, will you answer the phone for people who are really desperate? I'm like, please let me answer the phone for people who are desperate. I would love to. So, and I have one other question, if I may, for the parking lot.
Sure.
Okay. So you had said, and this was really powerful too, because I felt like I experienced this, but I don't know how or why I experienced this, but you said it, and I believe that I experienced it. You said the alcoholic mind continues to progress without the drink. And then my question is this only if we refuse to live upon spiritual lines? Is this only if we do not do the requirements, musts, and conditions? Because that scared me. Because the progression of my drinking once I picked up again was so severe. You know, and then because you said the alcoholic mind continues to progress. And so what do you mean by the mind progressing? My physical, my body's reaction to alcohol progressed to an obscene level. But what did you mean by also the alcoholic mind continuing to progress?
Right. The obsession of the alcoholic mind, right? The obsession, the greatest obsession, the strange mental blank spot.
Yeah.
All of those things get worse
Mm.
with time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you think about the doom curve, right? So, let's
Mm-hmm.
say that we stop drinking and we're at point B on the doom curve.
Yep.
We have a period of sobriety. Time has still passed. We're still going down that doom curve.
Mm-hmm.
So all we have is this moment to align ourselves with the spiritual principles of the program.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we have. When we're not doing that anymore, we could safely assume that a drink is around the corner, and when I pick up that drink, I'm going to be a worse alcoholic than when I got clean last time.
By 1,000%. That was my experience in a way I never thought was possible.
Breaking out felonies.
Right, right. I was in the hospital, you know. People were
Yeah.
like, I don't know if she's gonna make it, you know, and I'm 39 years old, and people are like, I don't know if she's gonna make it. Um, so the alcoholic mind continues to progress without the drink. And then I wrote the answer to that is that strange mental blank spot will continue to progress without the drink. The doom curve will continue to progress without the drink. And the solution to that, again, would be what we've talked about over and over again, which is working 3 times a week with other alcoholics, 10, 11, 12, and working on our spiritual condition on a daily basis. Is that
You got it.
okay? Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, the bedevilments are really is powerful for me just because, man, oh man, you know, they're that's a real thing right there. And then let me see. I know that I hate asking so many questions. Let's see, I have 2 more. Do we have time for 2 more?
Sure. I've got 4 minutes before my next meeting.
Let me pick the most important one then. Hold on a second. Um, hold on a second when these things are done. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the most important question that I have then with these minutes are honest willingness, honesty, and humility. And willingness is, I wrote down, action. Honesty first begins with introspection, honesty with self, then honesty with others. That will come with time. But I wanted to know what your definition is, or is it kind of humility, or what does it say in the big book?
So the big book doesn't give you a definition. And then this goes back to our exercise from page 47, where we're
Okay.
looking up what these definitions mean to us.
Okay. Okay.
My definition of humility is awareness of the arrow. Let me start over. The awareness of the error of guiding my life through the ego mind.
Oh my God, I freaking love it. I'm going to write that down. I love it. I love that definition. The awareness of what?
The error
The error.
by guiding my life by the ego mind, right? Self was what's defeated me. Self-surrender is indispensable. I made decisions based on self, which later placed me in a position to be hurt.
I love it. Because the reason I love it is because it rings true in my spirit.
Yeah.
It does. If I'm not being humble, this is how I feel. So it rings true for me very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand this thing of self until I really, really worked the fourth step. I mean, like really worked it. And
Mhm.
I can see, I mean, I put myself in some really, really bad positions, some dangerous, life-threatening situations
Mhm.
in sobriety by making decisions based on self.
That's right. Right.
So now it's, and that was the only tool I had, right? Was to make
Right.
decisions based on self because I did not have access to all the knowledge within, to God within, the presence of God.
Right.
Now we're gonna get to the point here in the study where we're gonna talk about the sixth sense. And the
Totally.
sixth sense is what we will make decisions on. And I moved cities based on the sixth sense.
I freaking love it. I love it and I believe in it because I maybe am not as I'm in touch. I believe it and I have been in touch strongly in my life. So I believe it so much. And I believe that as the clearing of the calamity and the pump, I believe that that will get even louder and clearer. So, so yay to that.
And I'm sorry, I have to abruptly stop.
No, I know you do. And no worries, no freaking worries at all. Let's see really quickly. So it's crazy.